Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our All Engineering at Medtronic career panel. My name is Susan, and I work for SHPE. I help run the internship program with Medtronic, and this is our second cohort that we'll be having this coming summer, and we're very excited to have the second cohort joining us through this experience. Medtronic and SHPE partnered last year for the first time to do this internship program. And so basically what this means is you would be applying through SHPE for a Medtronic internship position. And we will help walk you through that application process. Once you're at Medtronic, you would be with a cohort of interns all over the country, but we have a specific SHPE cohort that will be walking you guys through the experience, providing some additional support, really just carrying over that familia experience that we have at SHPE. And so it's a little bit of a different experience, but very similar to the other Medtronic interns. And certainly you'll be networking and getting to know all the interns in your divisions at Medtronic. So we just want to say thank you for coming today. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. We really want to make sure that you guys get all of your questions answered. So whatever questions you have, please put them in the chat. This session is being recorded. If you feel comfortable at any point and you want to raise your hand and turn on your mic and your camera and ask a question directly to one of the panelists, you can certainly feel free to do that. I just want to make you aware that it is being recorded and it will be shared on social media and other platforms with other interested candidates. Like I said, I've got lots of questions that I can ask, but we want to make sure that you all get your questions asked. So Cassandra, thank you for helping out. She'll be watching in the chat to make sure I don't miss any questions. But we're going to go ahead and get started. And so I want to give each of our panelists the opportunity to just introduce themselves. And we're going to start off with Esther and we'll go down the list. Panelists, if you wouldn't mind, could you just introduce yourself? Tell about what did you study in your undergraduate career? What is your position now at Medtronic, and just a little bit of your journey, how you got to where you are.
Okay, thank you. I'll get us kicked off. Hello, everyone. My name is Esther Ledesma Pumarol. I'm a global senior product manager for Medtronic, working for the transcatheter aortic valve replacement, which is part of our cardiovascular portfolio. I started as an engineer in my career, and as you can hear from my current role, I'm actually in marketing. However, I have to recognize that my career journey has been an evolution, if you will. I studied industrial design. I started as a design engineer in R&D, mechanical design more than anything, and then went back to school to Rochester Institute of Technology and got a master's in new product development. And then more recently got an MBA from the University of Wisconsin a couple of years ago. So ultimately has been just an evolution, leveraging my engineering knowledge focus into product development, which I would say, led me to this marketing role, which, believe it or not, leverages a lot of technical understanding from our products. And it's something that you may not hear or consider, I would say commonly. So yeah, thank you for allowing me to be here.
What a great journey. Thanks for sharing that. To John.
Hello. Once again, my name is Tijan. Started my undergrad in actually Miami, Florida, at Florida International University. The university has a very strong Hispanic presence, so SHPE was very active over there. So I met a lot of different people there, went on to do different things. My particular focus was in biomedical engineering as well as electrical engineering, 2 undergrads. And then I started Medtronic about a year and a half ago, about that long. So it's, I guess, still fairly new journey, going through Medtronic and whatnot, but it's still been very rewarding, for the most part. My job is to be a manufacturing engineer, one for our Link manufacturing line. So that's Link, that's one of our batteries product lines. Of course, Medtronic makes different things. One of them is batteries, and then we have different types of batteries, specifically Link. We have it here at MECC. I'm currently based out of Minnesota, and yeah, it's been one crazy ride. I've been learning everything. It's day to day, like my life is just, okay, like is something going on wrong with the line? Or let me fix it. Let me save some time to prepare for like the next event. How can we continually improve our manufacturing yield, keep it going and whatnot? And yeah, it's been very fun.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing that. Carolina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carolina Viramontes. I'm a clinical research specialist now for our peripheral vascular health organization, working on a liquid embolic study for occlusion of arteries. I studied biomedical engineering at Northwestern University, got a bachelor's, graduated in 2018, and started with Medtronic as a reliability engineer for a post-market quality group. So I did start as an engineer, spent about 3 years with that group. And last year was when I switched into the clinical study space, and now working more on site management for our clinical studies.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Gabriel, how about you?
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabriel Lopez, born and raised in Mexico, Reynosa, Tamaulipas, in the border with McAllen, Texas. I started with Medtronic about 5.5 years ago as an intern, actually, through SHPE. I like to say that I'm still heavily involved in SHPE, and mostly because it changed my life. Again, I was hired through SHPE. I would be willing to say that it's one of the best things that have ever happened to me. I love my job. Like I said, 5.5 years with Medtronic, started as an intern, 4.5 years full-time. Started as an intern, then engineer 1, engineer 2, engineer 3, engineering supervisor, and more recently, engineering manager. And that's a little bit about me and my career. Oh, and I guess my bachelor's is in mechanical engineering, and I do have a master's in manufacturing engineering that I completed while I was working full-time with Medtronic. So for what it's worth, in my humble opinion, honestly, you cannot work in a more supportive environment than Medtronic. And I don't think it's just me. Everyone that I talk to, everyone says the exact same thing. No matter what it is, graduate education, personal situation, whatever it is, Medtronic as a whole, extremely supportive, great company. So I'm just happy to see the interest, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you all so much. Those are great journeys. And I love how there's just such a rich variety of all of your different experiences and what you're working on. So I'm excited to dig a little bit deeper and hear more about your stories and get some advice. And I just want to remind the students, if at any time you've got questions, feel free to post those in the chat. We want to make sure you get your questions answered. I want to throw one out to the panel and see who would like to pick this up. I think a lot of us have a vision of what your days probably look like, but how could you break it down for us a little bit? What is it? And I know it's probably a hard question to answer because there's no typical normal day, right? But like, just pick a day this last week. What did that day look like for you? How much time was spent in meetings, working on projects? What does your day-to-day normally kind of feel like for you?
I can probably jump in. I personally, I spend probably about 7 hours a day in meetings, if I'm lucky, maybe a little bit more. And from a day-to-day perspective, and to John, he can probably confirm what I'm saying, but when you're in day-to-day operations, everything changes. It's very dynamic, which is something that I love. People usually say you either love or hate manufacturing operations. Thankfully, I love it. That being said, there is something that I do think it's critical for people in my role and just manufacturing operations as a whole. Everything changes every single day, but at the end of the day, we need to remember the long-term goal, the continuous improvement. We cannot lose focus on the big milestones, because it is really easy to just get sucked into those daily issues and just being tricked by them and just deep dive into many different things. But at the end of the day, there are milestones, there are projects, there are long-term projects because of a specific reason, and that reason is just being able to impact more patients' lives. And we need to make sure that we remember that every single day.
That's a great mindset and a great message. Thanks for sharing that. Are there any other panelists who would like to share what your typical day in the life of your job looks like?
I could probably give a different perspective since I'm like I guess a switch out of engineering. When I was in engineering, I think most of my day was issue management, and so it was more working with the R&D engineers, working with regulatory, working with safety on like how does this issue impact our patients and kind of what is the root cause of the issue. Now I'm on the clinical study side, and most of my day-to-day revolves around supporting our hospitals and research sites that are running our clinical studies. So it is more relationship management oriented, jumping on calls with research coordinators and kind of working with them through some of their challenges and making sure that we're maintaining safety for our patients as well as maintaining the progress of our study.
Sounds like a great variety of lots of different types of tasks. Yeah. Awesome. Let's jump in a little bit about just kind of how you all got to where you are now. Could you tell us, how did you choose this career? And I know that sounds like a hard question, another one, right? Because a lot of us got to our careers through a very winding path that wasn't very linear. We didn't look at it and say, oh, I'm going to be sitting in this spot and I'm exactly sitting that spot. So would some of you like to just kind of pick that up and tell us how did your early career choices and early life choices kind of lead you to where you are today?
I'll just jump in and say that in my case, it's interesting because I did have a passion and an attitude about design and development of product, and I think that is consistent through this day today. What's been interesting has been the evolution of that, because starting from the engineering side of things, if you think about the new product development process and working with requirements and focusing mainly in product industrialization, that was part of my early life or early career work. And then as I continue to progress in my career and have the opportunity to work closer to customers, if you will, then I started looking at the other side of things, where the adoption of customer needs and capturing those and transforming them into product requirements that they would then translate into manufacturing requirements. That whole idea was very interesting to me, and that's sort of what got me closer to where I am today, which is working on the marketing side, if you will. But what's interesting is that I'm not necessarily supporting product development at this point, just because of the role I am today. I'm more in charge of the strategy of the product and the execution of product line management, if you will, globally. So I get to support and work with many functions, including regulatory, which is critical for our company, manufacturing, operations, supply chain, and many other functions that you probably cannot think about, because it's interesting how complex it becomes. So I think ultimately, to connect it to the question, it has been an evolution and a progress. And I'm just gonna highlight that throughout that evolution overall, having the connection with people, right, with mentors and people that have done similar jobs, or at least have provided some guidance into what feels right to assume as a next step, has definitely been my approach. Because as you said, Susan, it wasn't that I sat down one day and said, yeah, I'm gonna end up in marketing. But definitely very gratifying process for sure.
Sounds like you probably had to say yes to a lot of different things in there that perhaps you weren't thinking of to kind of get to that.
Yeah. It's all about taking risks in a
Yeah.
way.
Wonderful. Would any other of you like to answer that and just kind of tell us how you got to where you are today? What were some of the choices that led you to your career today?
I could go, I guess.
Great.
So I guess it's kind of funny how you mentioned like earlier the idea of like, oh, some of us have like winding paths. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of funny for me because my path felt very linear for the most part. And there was due to like a number of different factors. For one, it's like, I guess like even before I started undergrad, there was like I had an inkling of like what kind of things I like or I could potentially be good at. And then I found out biomedical engineering and electrical engineering kind of lined up well with that. And also, being someone who was like originally from Jamaica and then like went to study in the US, it's like there were a number of different restrictions on things I could study as like, or like what kind of jobs or internships I could take. So then in a way, it's like even just picking my major from like freshman year was like a very big, like hard, like lock onto like what I could do for like the next, let's say even largest like 10 years or so. And then still feeling that to like today. But I'm also happy about those decisions because so like a lot of my life has been just being proactive about like where my current trajectory is going, and that could even translate like into my current job. So like at any given point, like I'm constantly like thinking about like what I'm going to do like within the span of like today or the next few days, as well as what's going to happen in like next say like 3 years, because then there's some like roadblocks that come up. So for example, like there may be like on a day-to-day, like I make sure I leave room in my calendar for events that happen on the manufacturing line. And and I could hear someone operate say, oh, this part broke, and you can't predict when something's going to break. So then always being ready for that. But at the same time, also, as Gabriel mentioned, is like not losing sight of like the larger, like, I guess larger projects, the larger points of like why we're here. So then I always like have it in my calendar saying, okay, not all the fire has been going out, like, so what are we going to do for this larger project, which could be, okay, we're going to improve our yield by X amount, or I want to achieve this promotion by X amount of time, because of those constraints I have in terms of like what I can do as international students, like it forced to be really address like what I want to do like moving forward, basically. Yeah.
So John, I can imagine you, like you're talking about that linear path of almost making those decisions, like looking at your own logic model, right? Like, if this, then this, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. Yeah. I have like a whole like a spreadsheet of like, oh, what's my task like? So I basically just like don't memorize everything. It's all in my paper.
For kind of thinking about just your career and where you guys are at right now, who would like to talk about what was your first win that made you confident that you were doing the right thing? You were in the right place with your career, you were doing the right thing. What was your first win that really kind of solidified that for you?
That's a good question.
It's a hard question.
It is, especially because sometimes, seeking feedback and receiving feedback from your manager or the people around you is probably the best way to validate that you're doing your work the right way. I think for me has been, I don't know, a couple of opportunities where I am generally a person that will try to think outside of the box and break the mold and, find different solutions for things. And I think it was a couple of years into my career, especially when I was promoted to senior design engineer, where I was leading, a design and industrialization of a new product. And we actually had to go and manufacture it in the Dominican Republic. So the whole project itself and the overall execution of it was something that in principle was challenging a little bit of the way of doing things in terms of, how we follow some of our engineering process. And I'll just say for the better, to be quite honest. So when we came down to the execution of those initial runs and see how everything flew and like everything just fell into place, that was to me something that I said, okay, I feel like this sort of value that I bring to the table and how I am able to bring people together, orchestrate this execution is something that indicates that I'm moving in the right direction. So,
Yeah. Aligning what you're doing with some of your strengths.
yeah.
Yeah. How about the rest of you? Does anybody else have a story or a time when you kind of thought, boy, this is it, I'm doing the right thing?
I guess I'll say I feel like I'm still on the career exploration journey. Having just switched from engineering to clinical, I feel like I'm still trying to figure where my skills lie at. But I'll say I think a moment I felt like within that journey, I think I felt like this is where I want to be. And this being Medtronic was like, I mean, being able to express to my manager, my first manager at the time, to say, hey, I want to explore clinical. I think I really like that area. And I also want to explore other areas to kind of grow in a different career, in a different direction. And the amount of support I got from a number of managers across the company to be able to get a stretch assignment in clinical, work in clinical while I was doing my old job, and then move into like a clinical team and interview with them and move in that direction. And then once I started with them, I think the moment I really felt like, yeah, this was really a great decision for me and a great move was really kind of, I think, back to Esther's point, like the impact I'm able to make in those projects. But I think for me, it was more a moment I felt where like, yep, Medtronic was the right decision for me, was that I still wanted, regardless of, yeah, I didn't think my day-to-day role was really something I wanted to do. I could still find a lot of opportunities to stay within the company and contribute to our overall impact to, increase the quality of life of people. So I think that's where for me it felt like, yep, this is, I want to stay in this. I'll figure out what my role is in that whole process, right? In that whole product development process, still figuring that out. But I'm very confident with like staying within healthcare technology and within Medtronic.
That's awesome to hear. And it's a little bit of a theme. I've recently been interviewing all of the 2022 summer interns and just hearing about their experiences. And actually heard from a couple of different interns, Carolina, that same experience happened to them, talking with their managers and saying, I really like what I'm doing, but I kind of am interested in this project over here too. And you use the word stretch. What did you call it? Stretch?
Right,
project?
like a stretch assignment or stretch project. Yeah.
And they actually use that phrase too. So it's interesting kind of thinking about the culture of Medtronic a little bit, that was something that even the interns were encouraged to do, like still get your work done, still keep your project, healthy. But if you can manage it, then yeah, try these other things too.
Yeah.
Great to hear. Well, we do have a question from one of the audience members I want to throw out to you all, particularly related to international student experiences. What was the hardest thing that you found when you were looking for work in the US? And did Medtronic help in that aspect? How did Medtronic help you?
Well, I guess I could speak to that a little bit. And I'm like, even right now, I'm still technically like an international student, like working. And I guess the hardest thing was just finding like jobs or like institutions that were willing to like accept international students like in the beginning, because I feel like once you've actually like say like gotten a job or got an internship and then you prove yourself, it gets a little easier. But then of course that's always like the biggest hurdle. And for me, like what I found was that there was no like sort of like hack to get around it. You pretty much like have to do your research, like figure out, okay, is this company that's like one that's willing? And like a lot of it's kind of being a little bit brave and sometimes just to asking the recruiter up front, like, oh, hey, does this company sponsor, do they accept internship students? There was just like one funny story where I applied for Fiat Chrysler and I technically passed all the requirements, but but I almost lost the internship because I was an international student or something like that. That got resolved, but like it just goes to show how much research you need to like do. And when it comes to Medtronic in particular, like Medtronic was fortunately one of those companies that was willing to take on international students like for full-time work and whatnot. So like that felt very grateful. And also I got this job through the SHPE conference because I know SHPE conference had a lot of companies that were like international student friendly, so to speak. So once you've like narrowed your list to, okay, which companies are willing to accept you, then it's just a matter of just doing the regular, let's say like integration with HR, like asking questions, interviews and whatnot. That's really the biggest hurdle, I would say.
Yeah, I think being brave and asking those questions. And I will say too that a lot of, and I can get you the specs of the requirements, Eric, for this position with Medtronic. It does get more challenging for companies to do the internship experience because it's just a short internship experience, while they have more limitations there sometimes than what they have with their full-time offers. So I don't know, I know, Gabriel, you talked about interning at that. Were you interning at the time that you were considered an international student, or were you interning at a different status?
Yeah, I actually interned as an international student. I was doing my master's at the time, or at least I was enrolled at that point. So it was a graduate internship. I don't know if it's different or
for
not. I know
undergrads.
requirements can vary depending on the position, right? But it's just something to keep in mind, but it is possible. But to your point, positions can vary, the requirements can vary.
Yeah. Good question. I have a question for Carolina specifically. How was the transition from engineering to clinical research? And what advice would you give to an engineering major that wants to delve into the world of clinical and medical research?
Yeah, well, one, definitely welcome. come along. It's a great ride. But I guess for me, from engineering to clinical, so I actually did undergraduate research at Northwestern at their medical school. So I had a little bit of like, and it was with human subjects or patients. So I actually had a little bit of experience with clinical studies and the regulations and kind of what went through it from a research site standpoint. So I think that really helped me kind of bridge that gap as I had interviews and kind of still speak to that experience. So that helped me, I think, get into clinical. I think having had that stretch assignment, having had a little bit of time with a clinical team, kind of learning the language, and then like being able to convey my skills in that clinical language was really kind of what got me into clinical. Now being in clinical, I feel like I do use, I mean, I'll say I don't think I use, right, like my necessarily fluid mechanics, thermodynamics skills and knowledge anymore, but I do see a lot of that problem solving mindset that comes into play. And I think the analytical part kind of comes into play as well, which is one thing that I really tapped into and that I wanted to further develop and let the teams know that I wanted to further develop those things and how I saw those skills could come into play in the clinical space. Yeah, so I think overall it's definitely a transition that isn't far removed. I don't think it's that different. And if you really are interested in clinical, I think looking at clinical roles, there's a lot of companies that have field clinical specialists. So that's actually people that are out in the field at the hospitals, like advising from an engineering perspective. And that was one I was really interested as an undergrad, one that Medtronic has entire teams of. So there's definitely a bridge there. And I think having engineering in the medical science space is not, I guess it's not unique, right? It's not rare. It's not rare. I think the skills can definitely overlap.
Lots of transferable skills there.
Yes, definitely.
And learning how to talk about those. I do want to acknowledge that somebody sent me a message about chemistry majors, and I will look into that and get you a private message about that specifically. But Alexa actually asked a question that was almost kind of next on the list. So Alexa is right on task with us too. Assuming that you all work at different Medtronic sites, what's the culture like at your site? Have you noticed there being big differences in an overarching culture? And as a follow-up for Latino employees, do you feel a stronger community at these different sites, or is the entire company pretty diverse? So there's lots of questions there. What's the culture like at your place? Are you noticing any big differences, and specifically addressing the Latino culture? So who would like to take that one on first? Great question.
Yeah, great question. So I'll just, I'll try to tackle a couple of aspects of the question. So I've been with Medtronic about 3 years at this point, I believe. And coming as a new employee 3 years ago, and then having transitioned between groups already, similar to what Carolina was describing, I think there's a little bit of everything. So first, there is an overarching sense of duty with the mission of the company, right? Patient-driven, improving lives of patients across the world, across therapies and diseases. I think you'll hear that same messaging from finance to supply chain to operations to accounting, anywhere in the company. So to me, coming from a different industry, that was also very shocking, because I hadn't had contact with a company where you would talk through different functions and get that sense of, commonality. I think though, in terms of the actual sites, we have many sites here in Minnesota. I think most of us, or all of us, are here in Minneapolis, but across the US, there are many sites. And I think the culture will vary a little bit depending if you are in manufacturing or if you are like part of a site that is not strictly manufacturing. Similar to what Gabriel described, and I think Jan as well, it's, very fast-paced driven, focused on getting product, the best quality, and that comes with a lot of time commitment and focus. However, I work on in the corporate space, and it's just it's different. It's a little bit more slower pace, if you will. I'm currently working remote, if you can believe it, so I'm not actually going into the office. No, none of my team is. And there are other teams at Medtronic who are also in the same boat. So you have a diversity of how we are actually working. Some other teams are hybrid, so they are required to show up at the office a couple of days a week. And that will vary depending on what group you are, what portfolio or operating unit you're part of too. And then we're related to the Hispanic and Latino experience at Medtronic. We are, in my opinion, one of the companies that has, that we are very advanced in our journey of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think at a certain level, we have a lot of commitment from the CEO perspective and senior leadership around the commitment towards bringing a more inclusive and equitable and diverse environment for us to work on. And that commitment will vary depending on where you are. And being completely transparent, we're here today because there's an intentionality from our company with SHPE, a partnership, to be more diverse, more inclusive, give access to students. And I think, to me, that's a reflection of how engaged and committed we are to walk the talk. Not only put our ads out there and say that we are committed to the Hispanic and Latino community, but we're also taking steps towards creating spaces to bring more students and increase retention for our talent. So I hope that's a little bit of I could offer some color to what's currently like. I don't know if Carolina or Gabriel, you guys have any other insights on it.
Great response. Great help. Thank you. Yeah, if there's anybody else who'd like to respond to that in just what you've experienced, that would be great too. Sounds like you nailed it. Got it.
Yeah, thank you.
That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. Andrea's asking, oh, I'm sorry. There's one before Andrea. Are there any recommendations, helpful tips to increase our chances at getting an interview and ultimately a position? And I know, we're talking specifically about, internships at this level. So I'm going to throw it, I think, well, Tijan, did you have an internship? I know, Gabriel, you talked about having an internship. Anybody that did an internship, can you speak to just some recommendations and tips there? And also Esther and Carolina, if you help with any of the review of applications or the second round of interviews, feel free to chime in there with your advice as well.
Yeah, so I can give my opinion. So I like to say that I've come full circle, right? I was an intern. I had an intern report to me. Then now I have interns reporting to other people when the other people are reporting to me. So it's been a fun experience. And this past summer, I'm going to say that I probably had the best intern I've ever had in my life. She was, wow, amazing, mind blowing. She kept asking for advice every single day. And I was like, I have nothing. The only thing that I can tell you, the only thing that sucks is that you graduate like 5 years from now. That's the only bad thing that I have to say. And when I think about what she did right, in my opinion, is for better or for worse, and hopefully this makes sense, she had her eyes in the money, right? In this perspective, the money being just doing a good job. Every single day, she was just so focused on the job, so focused on getting things done. She would literally tell everyone, I want to be the best intern you've ever had. She did it, by the way. Uh, Ask engineers every single day, like, let me learn from you. Can you teach me how to do this? Can I help you? Can I just shadow you? Just going above and beyond and doing a lot of those things that are, many of us think that are pretty basic, or that everyone is going to think about that, but it's just a matter of getting the job done, asking the questions, putting yourself out there. It can be pretty intimidating, especially as an intern. But if you go ahead and do it, I promise you, no one is gonna be mad about it. No one is gonna think anything negative about it. Everyone is gonna love it. And Esther and Carolina and Tijan, everyone talked about the Medtronic culture. Everyone here is more than willing to help. And just as young professionals, right? We all want to teach. We all want to be able to be mentors. We all want to be coaches. That's the whole reason of why we're all here, right? And we're not the only ones that do it. Everyone does it. So uh, just be yourself. Just be yourself. Put yourself out there. Through the interview process. If you have an interview, just be humane, be real, be honest. Uh, if you are on a step before that one and you're working right now through the application, put that in your cover letter. Be yourself. Ask the right questions and just put the patient first, right? I don't know what that's going to look like for every single one of you, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to put the patient first. So hopefully that makes sense.
That's great advice. Yeah.
That's it.
I
And
guess
I'll go ahead, Carolina.
I was just going to add kind of from the question of like how to make yourself stand out for a potential interview. Well, one, definitely apply through the internship process, right? Which I know that application is coming up. So definitely applying through that process, because Medtronic has been intentional in hiring interns through that process. So you're definitely you will be looked at, right? It's not like if you put it in kind of the void of an online job portal, which you might have less of a chance to be looked at. So definitely apply through the internship process. Make your resume, like I've looked at a lot of resumes now. I think most of us here have helped with career fair, and I do think like your resume is your first chance. It's that first impression, and so making sure your resume is concise, is effective, and highlights really like what you did in those experiences, and highlights kind of the outcomes of what you did, because I know we all want to put like everything we did, and a resume is so short and you have so little, it'll be seen for so little time that like you just want to make sure that you're getting the message you want across. And so what I always like give advice to students, and what I did as a student, was look at what that ideal role is. And I know Medtronic has intern descriptions as to kind of what the roles and responsibilities would really be and kind of skills they're looking for. And just like even take some of those words and put it on your resume if it aligns with what you did, right? So making sure like you're speaking the language through your resume so that it's easy for a manager to kind of pick out, yep, they did that and I understand that and they might be a good fit. So that's kind of the first like getting your foot in the door kind of thing, in addition to all of Gabriel's great advice once you're in there.
That is great advice. I met with a student this morning and looked at a resume with them, and those pieces that Caroline is speaking about, like tell the story of what you did. And a lot of things I would hear from recruiters would say, tell your story, but make sure that, you know, the part about telling your story, not just the organization story too, because if they see something on there that you've quantified, that you helped, you know, a certain number of students, or you helped with a project and, you know, a percentage of efficiency that was increased, a follow-up question might be, tell me how you did that. What steps did you do to do that? And you got to be able to speak to that. So I do think in the application process that you all are going through right now through the internship application, and Caroline is right, make sure you apply through the SHIP application first. It's okay if you started with Medtronic, eventually you'll all get there. But start with the SHIP application first. And I think it speaks a lot that the very first step that they're asking for is what I will call your professional skills. So a lot of people call your soft skills. That's what they're asking for in those essays. Tell us who you are. And then you're also going to do that in your first round interview and eventually get to a technical interview. But I think it speaks a lot to Medtronic's culture that they value both equally, your professional quote soft skills and your technical skills as well, that whole self that you bring to the table. So make sure you're addressing both in there. I do have another specific question about, and I just want to acknowledge that I got the message about your international status, and I will follow up with you privately and answer that. I'd like to get into some questions regarding just kind of a little bit more about your advice for undergrads. What is something that you wished that you would have received as advice when you were an undergraduate student, that looking back now, thinking, I wish I would have known that then. I wish somebody would have told me that then. Do you have any advice for these students?
Just short and sweet. I rather see people, you know, try and fail than just not try at all. When I was an intern, in my opinion, I don't think I did the best job, or at least I know that I could have done better. And a lot of that was just because I was not willing to take a risk, because, you know, you're an intern. I thought something really bad was going to happen. And I can tell you, everyone makes mistakes, senior engineers, principal engineers, everyone makes mistakes. So just go get it. It's going to be fine. Just try it. That's the biggest thing.
Good advice. Any other panelists have some advice, something that you wish someone would have told you when you were an undergraduate student?
I say my one thing would be do your best to, I guess, to reverse engineer the future you want, and then create like a daily action plan for achieving that. Because although like I did my best at it, like I think there were like some times during undergrad where I felt like I'd done it like even better, because like on one hand, you need, like, if you don't like know where you're going, that's going to be hard to like establish like a plan like for what you want to do. And then and that's something I really had to learn as an international student too, because with all like different restrictions about like where I could go, like what I could do, then I need to, in a sense, like future proof like the likelihood of me like getting a position. And also then making a daily action plan, and really making it daily, because like there were many things like I've gotten or missed out on that were a consequence of me like actually like either putting in the work like every day, like or not, or failing to achieve that. Because sometimes like the opportunities you need to acquire, they don't have like a very I would say like super straightforward, like linear like path. So like, for example, like there may be something where they tell you, oh, hey, like go put your resume out there. So you need to try to make your like resume once a week or once a day or something, because you never know which one is going to pop up. Or they may tell you, oh, hey, like try out this recruiter, seeing this recruiter, or try out this activity where there's going to be other recruiters. Just really putting it constant, because you never know like which one is going to be like that one like life-changing event, I guess you could say, that will push you forward.
That's great advice. And it kind of leads into a little bit to the next question that someone is asking. What do you do if you don't have any prior experience? Would that be a setback? How can you still stand out if you haven't had any experience yet? How would you all answer that question?
I'll say you have more experience than you think. And especially I think for internships, like we're not expecting you to come with a breadth of experience. And even, I mean, yeah, even any experience, honestly. So like, I think I would say you have more than you think. Like, look at what you're doing at school, look at what you're doing extracurricular wise. And if you do think you're a little bit light extracurricular or projects, like look at things you're interested in and join us and add some things kind of to your portfolios. Like you definitely have more experience than you think. I talked about being a costume director for my dance group in my interview for Medtronic for full time. And that was part of an experience I had where I learned how to work with other people, where there was issue management, where there was conflict management.
That's a great
example. So yeah, you have more experience than you think. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But also evaluating and looking at, is there something else I want to do? There's something else I want to accomplish. What about the rest of you? What do you think about that question? What do you do if you don't feel like you've got a lot of experience?
I also would put an effort into making sure that my resume tells the right story, because putting focus on what you said around the soft skills and what can you bring to the table, and leveraging what Carolina said. Maybe you don't have experience, but it doesn't mean that what you are able to bring to the table is not valuable or attractive for us or any other company. So I would also say, getting feedback on your resume, put it in front of people that have experience and can advise you on what to add versus not to add, or even getting coaching on how to tell your story, right? When you're doing your elevator pitch, how are you presenting yourself? That also goes a long way.
That's a great piece. The elevator pitch is huge and can start off a lot of those interviews and even essays as well, and kind of getting that common language about yourself. There is someone asking a very specific question about being a senior. I'm going to answer you privately because I think I've got another follow-up question for you. What this internship position is looking for is they're looking for current sophomores and juniors. It could be possible for seniors depending on how many semesters that you have left. You need to be able to come back after your internship and still have some undergraduate work left to do after your internship to be eligible for this position. And if that's not you, then certainly talk with Medtronic about full-time positions. I mean, if you're getting ready to graduate, congratulations, and let's start helping you find a full-time position. Somebody else asked,
Susan, quick note on that.
Yeah.
I think you can't apply for the internship, because I had an intern last summer that then graduated in the winter and we converted him full time. So it actually worked out perfectly in that sense. Yeah.
Okay. So I have another question about somebody being really interested in the robotics section of Medtronic, and this will probably be our last question. Can someone here talk more deeply about this area of Medtronic and the work that you all are doing in robotics, and what would potentially some of the roles be for an intern in this area? Does anyone have experience or knowledge, maybe not experience, but knowledge of that area?
So I'm just going to say, I'm not obviously part of that group, but I do know that we have been leading the way in terms of development of robotics that can support physicians' intervention, specifically within our spine portfolio. Obviously I'm not part of that group, as I said, but I know we have been promoting and advertising very strongly UGO, which is our product or main system for that group. So I will encourage you, if you're interested, Google UGO, and if you're coming to convention, I am sure we're going to have some spine team members there that are able to talk more broadly about our robotics team and what the whole idea, and obviously how we're supporting our interventions in patients. And then I don't have any information on internships on this area. I don't know if any of the rest of the group does, but that's something probably that we could follow up with.
Great, thanks so much for that. And I'll put a plug in what Esther was talking to there about convention. There will be a Medtronic team at convention. They're working out their schedule right now for when they will be there and what activities they're doing, but definitely make sure that you are engaging with them at convention. They will be there. I just want to do another couple of just quick reminders about the application process. Again, we've mentioned a couple of times, there is a Medtronic internship application out there on the Medtronic site, and it's fine if you've already gone and started there, but that's not where you want to get started if you want to do the internship application through SHIP. You're going to go to our website, ship.org/internship. There's a couple of things on there. If you have not yet watched the general info session that went into more detail about the application and interview process with the recruiting team, you can watch that recording on the website there. You can see the schedule and all the recordings for all the career panels that we've been doing. We have 8 of them that we've been doing. So thanks to all the Medtronic employees who've helped with that. The deadline for the internship SHPE application is 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, because that's where I'm sitting, is in Central Standard Time on September 21st. I will go in and I will download all the applications, and we will get started on the review process and the next steps for that process. If you have any questions in the meantime, you can email us at internship@ship.org. That will come directly to me and some of our other team members. And you also have the QR code there from the Medtronic recruiting team for some of their resources as well. So lots of next steps, but lots of people here to help you through that. If you ever get stuck, have a question, feel free to reach out. And thanks for that last piece of advice, Carolina. That's great advice. Thank you so much to all of our panelists today. I know you guys have busy schedules, and we really appreciate your time and energy today. And thanks to all the participants. I know you guys have busy schedules as well and are fitting us in between your classes, and we really appreciate it. So thanks everybody, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.